Good evening, everyone. Before I officially call our meeting to order, on behalf of the board, I want to take a few minutes to ask that we remember one of our students, Freya Lappenter, who passed away on May 7th. Freya was a fifth grader and attended Van Allen Elementary School. Although Freya was nonverbal, she was still able to let you know how she was feeling and what she needed. Her family shared that she loved snuggling with her father and spending time with her best friend, Mackenzie. Freya also loved to be outside in her hammock, watching My Little Pony, or dancing with her mom to Alan Walker or K-pop Demon Hunters. Our board extends our deepest and heartfelt sympathies to Freya's parents, Alicia Neckley and Jesse Lappenter, and her brother Tyler, as well as her many other family and friends who will continue to hold Freya's memories close to their hearts. Please join me as we take a moment of silence in remembrance of Freya Lappenter. Thank you. And thank you for joining us tonight. I will officially call our meeting to order this Tuesday, May 26, 2026. Thank you to those attending our meeting in person, joining us by Zoom, and those staying informed by watching our meeting at a later time. The public is reminded that if they wish to speak during community comment, they will need to fill out a speaker form located in the back of the boardroom on the table and turn the form in to Board Secretary Kim Coven, seated at the end of the board table on my left. Comments will take place during the designated community comment portion of our agenda. And before we get to tonight's agenda, I want to take a moment to introduce those seated at the table with me. To my right, we have Directors Horn Fraser, Eastham. To my left, we have Vice President Abraham, Director Lingo, Board Secretary Coven, and joining us via conference phone, we have Director Finch. That takes us to the first item on the agenda is approval for tonight's agenda. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote.
Online voting is open. Thank you, Director Finch.
Not logged in, a yes vote.
Thank you, Director Lingo. I didn't get, Jennifer Horn Fraser is the only one I got.
Oh,
Director Abraham,
Mine says it's been recorded.
Malone, or Ruthine, I have yours. Charlie, I don't have yours, and you're a yes. Thank you, Director Abraham.
I'm voting yes, please.
Thank you, Director Eastham. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with Directors Abraham, Eastham, Horn Fraser, Lingo, and Malone voting yea, and Director Finch voting nay.
thank you. Next up is our education showcase, and we will welcome Christine Grant Elementary School Principal Ken Turnus to the podium.
Are we okay to click slides here? And okay. Richard, come on, stop it. Let's see if we can pull it up. Guys, come on up.
You see it open in the tab at the top.
I do.
Nice, all right. Yeah, again, my name's Ken Turnus. I'm the principal at Christine Grant Elementary. It's not my show tonight, it's theirs. So we have our student council, various representatives. There's quite a few others as well. Then we also have Bridget LaRoche and Nicole Mooney, who basically run the whole thing with our group of Grizzlies. So I'll let them take it away.
Hello, I'm Bridget LaRoche, and this is Nicole Mooney, and we are the Student Council Advisors for Christine Grant Elementary. One of the best parts about leading this group of students is helping them learn how to step into leadership roles and also helping them realize that they can make a positive impact on our school community and also our greater community.
This group has spent the year planning activities that revolve around building school spirit, encouraging kindness, supporting our community, and helping make school more fun for everyone. Tonight, they're excited to share some of the projects they've been working on this year. And before we begin, we're going to have each of the students introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Aria. I'm in 5th grade.
Hello, my name is Elijah and I'm in 4th grade.
My name is Graham and I'm in 4th grade.
My name is Carter and I'm in 4th grade.
My name is Maya and I'm in 5th grade.
My name's Leo and I'm in 5th grade.
My name's Jeffrey and I'm in 4th grade.
Us Grizzlies like to promote school spirit in a fun way. Sometimes we do dress up weeks. These are some of our examples.
Each Earth Week, we have challenges for the student council members to clean up trash in our schoolyard. We also have Earth Week challenges, which can help planet Earth and its surroundings. This year we had a special day called Fancy Lunch. We had fifth grade students, council members, be the servers for the students, and we made our lunch act look like fancy.
It's important for our student council to plan social emotional activities throughout the year. One example is Positive Post-it Day. Positive Post-it Day is when our student council writes positive quotes on a sticky note, then puts them on lockers and doors before people arrive. Another example is Kindness Week. Kindness Week is where we challenge our school to do one act of kindness a day, because we all know one act of kindness goes a long way.
An important part of the Grant Student Council is creating opportunities for our school to impact our greater community. We call these Grizzly Givebacks. Our first give back of the year is always October. We ask students to donate socks for the shelter house. This year, we collected 856 pairs of socks. From March 30th through April 7th, we did a toy drive for the Children's Hospital. We collected 61 toys this year. This is a thank you note for the UI donations.
One Grizzly Give Back we do each year is a food drive. We ask students to donate food items for the North Liberty Food Pantry. These are pictures of student council members counting and sorting the donations. This year we collected 728 pounds of food. Another Grizzly Give Back is Coins for Cats and Dogs, a fundraiser for the Iowa City Animal Shelter. Each day of the week, we ask students to bring in different types of coins. This year, we raised just over $100.
Our biggest Grizzly Give Back is the Grant Mini Dance Marathon. The Grant Mini Dance Marathon is an important event of the year. The week of Mini Dance Marathon, we host a coin drive and a dress-up week. Thank you to my Ava, Winnie, Georgia for creating this amazing poster sharing what to wear and what coins to bring for the coin drive. Thank you to Graham for creating this amazing Save the Date poster. Another huge thanks to Brooklyn for creating this poster sharing the date, time, what activities are going to be there, and most importantly that all children must be accompanied by an adult. These are just a few of the great photos that were taken at the Mini Grant Dance Marathon. Thank you so much to our entire grant community, because without them we wouldn't have been able to raise $3,683.73. Thank you.
At the end of the year, we had student council members share their favorite thing about being a leader in our school, and here are some examples of what they wrote.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you guys so much for sharing all the amazing things that's happening at Christine Grant. Have a great one. Next up is community comment. Thank you for your interest in the Iowa City Community School District and for your willingness to share your comments. You are reminded to give your name, address, and topic in which you plan to speak about. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. Speakers who make comments are reminded that they are responsible for their own statements and may be subject to legal action for those which include hate speech and that are threatening, harassing, or defamatory in nature. It is expected that speakers will address the board and each other with civility and abide by the stated time limit. All community comment directed at non-agenda and agenda items will take place at the beginning of the meeting and will be limited to 4 minutes per speaker and 5 minutes for speaker who has the assistance of an interpreter. Speaker's time limit will be displayed on the iPad on the ledge in front of Board Secretary Ms. Colvin, and an alarm will sound once the speaker's time has expired. The initial community comment period will be limited to 1 hour. Remaining community comment, to the extent necessary, will take place at the end of the meeting. The board will not engage in any discussion during public comment. The role of the board during this time is to listen. Any individual who does not abide by these rules or otherwise disrupts the meeting may be asked to leave and or referred to law enforcement. Our first speaker for tonight is Paget Skolman.
I'm going to set my timer because I'm a long talker so I can see. So good evening. My name's Dr. Paget Skogman. I'm a pediatrician, and full disclosure, I have no criticisms of what's happening in the Iowa City School District. My children actually live and go to school in Marion, or like the Cedar Rapids area, but I treat children all across eastern Iowa, and am also involved at the state level as well as the national level through the American Academy of Pediatrics, and I happen to be a physician ambassador for excellence on youth mental health as well as screens and social media. So I'm coming today simply to plant a few seeds of idea regarding kind of ed tech and screens and kids, and then you all are doing a fabulous job based on what I've seen with those children, so you can take what I say and do whatever you want with it. So I think we are at a really awesome point in time as a nation and a society, but where we're starting to see kind of the downstream repercussions of having ed tech and smartphones and social media around for a while, right? Smartphones became ubiquitous in 2012. Ed tech has evolved in schools over the years. And I'm not sure what your school districts do kind of, but each of my children, my youngest is right here. She's 5. Her name is Marley Jo. She has an iPad in her pre-K room. And so she wears headphones and learns on an iPad through iReady, and they have a program for phonics, and a couple other things that they do with that, as well as watch like some YouTube dance stuff on the screens. And most of that probably is okay, but I think as we're watching and learning how science is evolving and what the screens and kind of the quick rewards and dopamine do to their brain, not only their kind of amygdala, but their prefrontal cortex, as well as even things like thinning kind of the layer of the brain. We're at a good opportunity in time as a school district, as well as parents, to kind of stop and reevaluate like, hey, is actually giving our pre-care kindergarten students an iPad in their best interest? Or does their fine motor development and perhaps their social emotional interaction with other kids, as well as their ability to learn to read and write, better if we do it a little bit old school? Now, a couple cool things can come from this, I believe. One is cost savings. So I think you have to remember, we live in obviously a capitalist society. EdTech is very profitable, right? So iReady is a for-profit company. They are marketing to teachers and community members like yourself that it's kind of a superior option, when in fact, I think data is starting to show and will continue to that good old like worksheets and flashcards are potentially superior. Which is a cool opportunity as a school board, because then perhaps there's some cost savings to be found in scaling some of these things back. I also think we need to remember that there is a time and a place for technology, so it's not that it has to be all or none, but especially as we know how the brain evolves and develops, waiting until later, so perhaps being really technologically aggressive in high school, where you teach coding and Excel and PowerPoint spreadsheets, could offer a lot of potential. But if you keep it pretty minimal as they're younger, they have really strong creative thinking, their social emotional capacity improves, their ability to handle different sensory inputs because they're actually like exposed to their kids and engaging in a little bit more noise as the day goes on. So like really simple things, but all that end up actually making a big difference over time, given the number of hours that they keep in the school district. So I have no specific recommendations other than consider for your local level, I would say K through 8 screening back. I'm on a committee now at the state level that's looking at kind of 6 through 12. That's my timer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we will have Mary Murphy.
My name is Mary Murphy. This district cannot afford to fill the Executive Director of Secondary Schools position without taking money from classrooms. I ask you not to fill this position. However, if you must, defer your vote and put a draft of the contract on a future agenda so the public has an opportunity to review it and comment on it, especially when you don't have a complete investigation. And to do otherwise is a breach of your fiduciary duty. Also get legal advice from an independent counsel, one who doesn't do a lot of work for school districts in the state of Iowa. That's actually not why I was coming tonight. I'm here tonight for 3 reasons. First, policies are not a substitute for accountability. Employees are still required to follow laws, regulations, honor contracts, and meet the essential duties of their position. There seems to be some misconception on the part of some board members that employees cannot be held accountable without a specific policy. That is incorrect. Professional standards and common sense still matter. I'm concerned that focusing too heavily on rewriting policies will delay accountability and financial right-sizing, making financial recovery harder and actually resulting in the closure of more elementary schools than necessary. Second, I strongly support transparency, including a full examination of what caused this financial crisis. One example is this federal tax lien. The lien was for $377,000 plus in unpaid 941 payroll taxes covering 3 periods in 2023 and 2024. It was signed by the IRS in December of 2024 and recorded in January of 25. The lien was against all district property and rights to property. The board should have been informed. It's a material event. It's extremely unusual. A release wasn't recorded until February 18th of 2025. That means the district failed to pay payroll taxes on multiple occasions, despite notices from the IRS before a lien was filed. While personnel matters may require confidentiality, financial accountability does not. I ask the board to independently investigate and publicly disclose when the district received the tax funds, where the funds were deposited, whether the funds were moved or used for other purposes, when the tax funds were due and paid, and why payment was delayed long enough for a lien to be filed, and how much taxpayers paid in penalties and interest. These are financial accountability questions, not personnel questions, and any confidential information can be redacted. The public deserves transparency and assurances that safeguards are now in place. Third, please foster a board culture where curiosity, due diligence, and accountability are expected and not just in a financial crisis. I mentioned the tax lien in 2 separate emails to the board in 2025, including that it was an unusual event. All of you should have responded to those emails, and I only got, I think, 1 response, maybe 2. That tax lien, along with other material matters, deserved and continues to deserve greater scrutiny. Please watch for red flags and exercise some healthy skepticism when you hear from the public. Think about responding, at least internally, if not externally. As part of your fiduciary duty, I urge you to consider retaining an independent investigator or firm to document the events that led to this financial crisis so the root causes are fully understood and accountability and restored public trust can move forward. This documentation should be added to your financial leadership document, which looks more like a list of tasks, so the problem, its time period, and magnitude are adequately described and not swept under the rug. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we will have Amber Smith.
Hi, my name is Amber Smith. I have a kindergartner here at Twain Elementary in Iowa City, and I'm here raising concerns about the one-to-one Chromebooks and technology in the classrooms in elementary and middle school. I believe in the importance of computer literacy in our students and how it does have a place in the world, but I don't believe it serves an everyday purpose in elementary and middle school spaces. Each day, more and more studies prove extended screen time is detrimental to students' mental health, behavior, brain function, and overall mood. It has been proven that students physically reading and writing helps reinforce learning, as well as strengthens fine motor skills that are critical to development. While my child is in kindergarten, so we have some of the learning is far off, I also do fear for her peers and in the future, as when she's researching basic things or using technology in the classroom. A lot of people use Google, which, I mean, I'm not sure it has an integrated AI function. I don't know if that's disableable, but for the most part, even if they have their phones or using their own personal iPads, it can't be disabled. And that leaves out the ability or the option for students to have to look at a piece of media, read through it, and skim and find those answers to questions. It's just given. There's no work, there's no comprehension. They're not using their critical thinking skills that they need not just for school, but for everyday life. And being able to use physical pieces of media, such as encyclopedias or books, and learning how to utilize libraries and other things, it's just a time to where they can sharpen and hone those skills for everyday life that they'll use in the future in high school and college. In our home, we were much more lenient with screens. I have a 5 and a 3-year-old. And I noticed in preschool, when my daughter was in preschool at Mark Twain as well, there tended to be, by the time she got home, tended to be more tantrums just because she was overstimulated at night. Then she had all the stimulations from school because we're very lucky to be able for her not to be in daycare. Her grandparents took care of them during the day. So it created a lot of problems at home. And as we've gone into kindergarten, we've minimized screen time during the week after school. So we do little to none. And she does have an iPad, but we have limited to usages on the weekends. And you can see the extreme change in behavior, her ability to focus. There's less tantrums. There's just less noises in our house in general. And it creates for smoother bedtimes, which creates better sleep, which prepares her for her day at school. All in all, while screens are a part of daily life, I believe they're just a non-essential item in everyday classroom usage in elementary and middle school. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we will have Emily Campbell.
Good evening. My name is Emily Campbell. I have 2 children in the district, and I've worked in financial planning and budgeting for more than 20 years. I've spoken to this board many times about its responsibility for financial oversight and governance. I'm here tonight to remind the board of financial oversight commitments it has already made. In the board financial leadership update, the board outlines action steps it said it would take after learning about the district's financial crisis in January 2026. Although the document was discussed by the board at the meeting 2 weeks ago, 2 of those actions require review this evening. First, the board said it would review the district's organizational chart and use an outside firm to review the current district staffing approach as part of its multi-stage approach to obtain and sustain financial health and stability. Second, the board said it would review and update Administrative Policy 303.2 regarding administrator qualifications, recruitment, and appointment, and would include board involvement in the administrator hiring process. Those are both reasonable and responsible actions. They recognize that the district should carefully evaluate administrative structure and hiring before filling high-level positions. They also ensure board oversight and transparent hiring processes for administrative positions. The district is in a financial crisis. Crises also create opportunities to rethink systems and make strategic changes. Right now, you have vacant administrative positions and an opportunity to evaluate whether the current structure is affordable, efficient, and aligned with district priorities. But last Friday, the Iowa City community received an email from the superintendent announcing both his resignation and his request to move into a different executive level role within the district as the executive director of secondary schools. That communication came from the superintendent, not from the board. And tonight, that position change appears in the consent agenda for you to rubber stamp without a salary listed, without a contract attached, without a search, without any public discussion, without a budget update, and without the organizational review the board said it would conduct. You cannot responsibly reduce administrative costs if executive level positions are filled before the board holistically reviews whether the positions are necessary and affordable. Director Finch has been requesting an updated administrative organizational chart since March. That is not a procedural request. An org chart helps the board understand what leadership structure the district truly needs to carry out its goals in a financially responsible and sustainable way. She's asked at every board meeting, yet no chart has been provided. Tonight's agenda even includes an organizational chart update, but no org chart is attached. You as the board should follow the process you already committed to: a review of the organizational structure, evaluation of staffing needs, and use of outside expertise before approving any administrative hires. You know what the right course of action is. You already outlined it in your financial leadership update. Please follow the process you already committed to. It was a commitment to students, to teachers, to the public, and to yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we will have Sandy Hong.
Hello, my name is Sandy Hong. I live in Iowa City, and I'm the parent of 2 children with 2 children in the Iowa City School District. I'm also a pediatrician who has served at the national level at the Academy, American Academy of Pediatrics. This is reality. Buying laptops and using online programs and edutainment has not improved learning in our students. If anything, it has added to the digital distraction that is afflicting all American households. We have students and now young adults with shorter attention spans, poor memorization skills, and increased need for instant gratification. Deep learning and comprehension require time for contemplation and repetition. Many studies have shown that when you look at a screen, the visual cortex is very stimulated. This is not the part of the brain that needs to be stimulated for deep learning. Deep learning requires repetition, contemplation, and calm. Studies have shown that physical text is better for story comprehension and memory. Studies have shown that writing notes is more effective for memorization than typing. No studies have shown that the use of computers or laptops has increased the comprehension of math and reading in our students. Please stop spending money on unnecessary digital devices. It is fiscally unsound, and I understand that we're having some fiscal issues now. Children who cannot read are just learning to construct sentences and paragraphs. They don't need a laptop. I would ask the district to step away from the one-to-one Chromebooks at the grade school and middle school level. I would ask that computers and screens be used with very specific learning and educational objectives in mind. I would like the district to consider going back to large-screen computer-based labs to teach students the necessary tech skills that they will need at very specific times during grade school and middle school. And just to let you know, my child, I have a 3rd grader and a 7th grader, and my 7th grader has had a Chromebook since he was 1st grade. And he has been put in classes to help him learn how to use technical skills. He still can't type. So I feel like whatever we're doing, even with the tech we have, isn't right, and I would like the district to relook at that. And I am able, willing, and ready to show you any of the studies and data that you would like on pediatric brain behavior, cognitive social behavior, and computer use in schools if you're interested. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we'll have David Norpier.
Good evening. 3 things I'd like to talk about tonight. First off, equity. When I look at you guys, I see Director Malone, I see Director Eastham, representative of communities that have historically not had access to information. And as I talk to my parents that I coach, that I know, I find that they have not been receiving information about what's going on here. Last week I asked you to please just take a newspaper article. We know who subscribes to newspapers, we know who reads newspapers, and we know who don't. If you could get that information to the community, that would be a step towards equity. If equity is important, we need to share information. We need to be honest. We have not been honest. These emails that we've been receiving have not provided all of the information. I would ask the board to rethink that. We have heard nothing from the board. I've received no emails from the board. I'm not sure if that's the president's role for communication, if it's everybody's role, but it would be really good if the board would start talking, sharing information, and sharing resources so that there was equity. Second issue, so I've had a chance to talk to a lot of teachers this week. And the first response that I've had is, what are they thinking? I hope you guys realize that and I think everybody understands that for legal reasons, for personnel reasons, maybe this movement, maybe this, it's something that works or you see it as working. But a lot of people have expressed to me that this is not a good move because people are asking for accountability. It's not there. They don't want to see the same faces in different positions. There's a lack of trust. There has been a lot of negative energy and a lot of stress associated with this. And why continue? And I would hope as board members that one, you guys are receiving a lot of emails about this, but I hope too that you reach out to our teachers because I think ultimately they're your most important employees. They're the ones who make the biggest difference they're the ones who need to be happy. Next thing I'd like to talk about is tech, which people are talking about tonight. 7 years ago, I attempted to meet with district administration and provide a lot of very good scientific data. One of those people that I met with was a Mr. Adam Kurth. You guys probably know his name. What I felt was deflected. I wrote the board a very nice, very well thought out, very long letter. 2 directors contacted me with questions, and they were very intelligent, well thought out questions, and 5 members of the board did not. I did not even receive any type of verification that they had received the emails. 7 years ago. Since that time, we've spent $7, $8, $9 million on tech. Half of our schools had test scores that went down last year. Tech has not improved anything. We've spent millions of dollars. That's the basic reality. If you guys want to understand what tech does to people's brains, you've got doctors, 2 of them this evening. You can reach out to people. You can make it an agenda issue. You can disseminate information. But let's make better decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we will have Katie Linder.
Good evening. My name is Katie Linder, and I live in Iowa City and have 2 children in the district. I come to you today about the ongoing budget crisis. I, like others who have spoken this evening, was disappointed to see an email come in from the superintendent that it appears the board will approve of his transfer to a less senior administrative role. I think many of us in this community feel it would have been a better practice to evaluate if the role is truly needed, and if determined so, do an open search and have Mr. Degner apply for the role. Given his involvement in the current financial crisis, many of us also in this community feel it would have been fair to evaluate his performance against that of other applicants and ensure the process is both fair and transparent. As you move forward, please don't make the same mistakes of the past. Let's learn from it. I encourage this board to be exceedingly transparent as you search for an interim and full-time replacement for Mr. Degner. This community continues to seek transparency and accountability in this ongoing crisis. You have an opportunity now to do a really hard reset, so let's not squander it. As we look forward, I think many of us in this community, as has been said tonight, are seeking conversations around more long-term and permanent solutions to our current financial state. We've made cuts, but we know those are not enough. What are these conversations going to look like over the next month and year? What should we be prepared for as we look toward this June meeting with the state? Do we have a more solid idea of how much we're going to need to cut? What are our options? If it's school closures, which it sounds like it will be, how many are we looking to close to get out of this continuing to grow hole? The board is at the helm now, especially with the transition of Superintendent Degner. I encourage you to take the reins and start communicating more openly, honestly, and transparently with this community. It's going to take many hands in the wider community to move forward. Let's act like it and start communicating like we understand that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we will have Laura Westermeyer.
Good evening. My name is Laura Westmeyer. I live in Iowa City. The proposal to demote our superintendent to another senior leadership position is unacceptable and reflects the same failed governance that brought this district to its current crisis. Under the current administration, ICCSD has experienced measurable academic decline, financial instability, collapsing staff trust, and repeated concerns regarding retaliation, failed oversight, administrative shielding, and misconduct. This is not the result of state politics. Every Iowa district is under pressure, but neighboring districts like Solon, Mount Vernon, Williamsburg, Clear Creek, Amana, Linn-Mar, and others are outperforming ICCSD by substantial margins. Publicly available data shows ICCSD falling dramatically in statewide rankings under current leadership. Board policy gives you an evaluative duty to review district performance, expenditures, leadership effectiveness, and alignment with district educational goals. Yet, for years, teachers, families, and community members repeatedly raised concerns regarding academic decline, retaliation, procedural irregularities, hostile workplace culture, failed oversight, and policy violations. Instead of meaningful investigation and accountability, this board too often deferred to the very administration it was elected to oversee. Oversight is not ceremonial. Governance requires diligence, preparation, independent review, and the courage to confront uncomfortable truths. This board failed to provide those guardrails, and our students, teachers, and community are now paying the price. I strongly oppose retaining Matt Degner in any leadership role with ICCSD. I also urge the board to get an independent external review of administrative conduct, retaliation concerns, evaluation integrity, policy enforcement, and oversight failures. This district does not need administrative recycling. It needs structural reform, independent accountability, transparent governance, and new leadership committed to restoring trust, academic excellence, and integrity to public education in Iowa City. Several long-serving board members should seriously reflect on whether they can credibly continue serving after presiding over this period of decline, financial instability, and public distrust. Our community has witnessed very, very, very poor board leadership. Our students only get one education. This community cannot afford another decade of denial, shielding, and decline. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we will have Alicia Meggett.
Good evening. My name is Elisa Meggett. I live in Iowa City. I taught in Iowa City schools for more than 20 years because I believe deeply in public education, in students, and in this district's mission. And tonight I want to say clearly that the district's current financial crisis did not emerge in isolation. The overdue audits, borrowing, failures, and public loss of institutional credibility are symptoms of a much deeper governance and organizational crisis that many educators and community members attempted to raise internally for years. For too long, serious concerns regarding academic decline, retaliation, hostile professional culture, weakened accountability systems, and administrative shielding and harmful decision-making were minimized. They were absorbed internally or dismissed without meaningful independent review. ICCSD is experiencing steady academic decline. Data from the National Center for Education Statistics, the U.S. Department of Education, the Iowa Department of Education, the U.S. Census data altogether reflect Iowa City's decline from approximately 159th in Iowa school district rankings to 241st out of 300 districts, falling from the upper half of the state into roughly the bottom quartile under Superintendent Matt Degner's leadership. North Central Junior High, where I taught, it's fallen from the top 30th performing junior high in Iowa in 2016 when Colby Miller took over, and he's taken it down to 167th in the state, while he was repeatedly shielded from accountability by senior administration. As board members, we trusted you with oversight over the administration. Yet for years, this board has repeatedly chose deference over investigation, optics over accountability, and administrative protection over transparent governments. And I know this personally. After reporting concerns regarding discrimination against a student and administrative misconduct, I experienced years of escalating retaliation and professional harm under Matt Degner, Chase Ramey, Nick Proud, Eric Howard, Carrie Motherweather, and of course, Colby Miller, and Brady Shutt. I endured dozens of negotiated agreement violations, bogus reprimands, punitive and unsubstantiated evaluations, ADA accommodation failures despite documentation from multiple physicians, hostile working conditions, workplace sabotage, unwarranted disciplinary actions, surveillance, gaslighting, professional isolation, and repeated interference with my teaching and professional responsibilities. I filed grievances. I reported concerns repeatedly. I documented extensively, and this board was informed again and again and again. Yet no meaningful investigation occurred. The administration responsible for these conditions was repeatedly protected and empowered by a board unwilling to investigate, confront misconduct, or impose meaningful accountability. The harm was profound. Over the course of this experience, I developed severe PTSD documented by multiple medical professionals. I underwent hundreds of medical appointments, surgeries, injections, and treatments. Today I had 3 shots alone. While trying to survive conditions that no educator should ever endure in a public institution, supposedly committed to equity, dignity, and educational excellence. But this is bigger than me. This is about what happens to a district when there are no guardrails. Healthy public institutions require independent oversight.
Next up, we will have Maka Pilcher Hayek.
Hi, I'm Maka Pilcher Hayek, and I have kids at City High. We've had kids go through the district since kindergarten. It has been wonderful. We absolutely love City High. I'm here because it seems that the public comments get more traction than emails, which I've also sent to the board. If you approve Matt Degner's reassignment to another high-level administrative position, this is important, any remaining hope of the board regaining public trust is gone. And that is devastating. We knew we were going to have to make changes to our district structure like is happening throughout the state because there isn't as much state funding, okay? We knew that. That you all were going to have really tough decisions in the future about how we may need to restructure our district. But the mistakes that our admin team made are going to force you guys to make really hard decisions really fast. And to do that, I mean, I sat on the board with some of you. To do that, you really need the community to have your back, which is the same expression I used last time. We really need a good board right now. We really need good leadership from you guys. If people stop coming after you do what you do tonight, like if you accept this reassignment and people stop coming, I want you to understand it's because they're starting to give up. And that is the last thing you guys need. You should be glad people are still coming and talking to you about this because we love our teachers. We love the buildings where we send our kids to school. But you're going to need us to support you through what is going to be a brutal next several years. And make no mistake, the decisions, the systemic mismanagement caused by Superintendent Degner, Deputy Chase Ramey, the HR director, the systemic mismanagement is going to make the next several years so much harder for you guys. So please listen to us. Please allow us to give you this kind of support and don't disappoint us by rubber stamping another administrative decision. Thank you.
Thank you. That takes us to tonight's public hearings. And the first one is a resolution on the proposed deposits of proceeds received from the sales of the Hills property into the general fund. Vice President Abraham.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the matter of the proposed deposit of proceeds received from the sale of the Hills property located at 301 West Main Street, Hills, Iowa, into the general fund. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on May 12th, 2026. Notice of the public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on May 13th, 2026. Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public?
Hearing none, we will close that public hearing and move on to our second public hearing, which is the resolution on a proposed deposit of the proceeds received from the sale of the ESC at 1725 North Dodge Street property into the general fund.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the matter of the proposed deposit of proceeds received from the sale of the Educational Service Center located at 1725 North Dodge Street, Iowa City, Iowa, into the general fund. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on May 12th, 2026. Notice of the public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on May 13th, 2026. Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public?
We will close that public hearing and move on to our last public hearing, which is the resolution on a proposed deposit to proceeds received from the sale of approximately 42.4 acres of unimproved real estate.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the matter of the proposed deposits of proceeds received from the sale of approximately 42.4 acres of unimproved real estate previously purchased from Scanlon Family LLC into the general fund. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on May 12th, 2026. Notice of the public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on May 13th, 2026. Are there questions from the board? Are there questions from the public?
We will close that public hearing. Next up, before we get to our consent agenda, were there any questions from directors who reviewed the bills this cycle? Hearing none, are there items from directors that directors would like pulled from tonight's consent agenda?
I would like to pull the personnel agenda, please.
Thank you, Director Lingo. Are there any other items? Hearing none, is there a motion for tonight's consent agenda minus the personnel agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. Thank you, Director Finch.
I'm a yes vote.
Thank you, Director Malone. Director Lingo, how would you like to vote?
It should be a yes, but
Didn't
must
get
not
you.
be working.
All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. That takes us to the personnel agenda that was pulled from tonight's consent agenda. Director Lingo?
Keep it short. Long and short of it is, for me, pulling the item is that I disagree with the new executive director of secondary education receiving a 2-year contract, as we do with other administrators in the district. I'm willing to pass with 1-year term. As it is not, I will be a no vote.
Are there any other comments from directors?
I concur with Director Lingo.
Thank you, Director Finch. Board Secretary Coven, I'm sorry, is there a motion for the personnel agenda?
I move to approve the personnel agenda, item 7, on the consent agenda.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
Kim, I'm a no vote.
Thank you, Director Finch.
Board Secretary Coven, I'm a yes vote.
Thank you, Director Malone. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with Directors Abraham, Eastham, Horn Fraser, and Malone voting yea, and Directors Finch and Lingo voting nay.
Thank you. That takes us to tonight's policy review, and Director Lingo chairs that committee, Policy and Governance. There's a whole list of policies. I won't read through it, but you can give us a recap.
It's going to be a recap, let me tell you. So to start with the 700 series, I mean, we've been coming back to this since February, but we'll be coming back to it again because we received policy primers, 14 new policy primers to coincide with state and federal regulations. So this month, to go through what we did get, there are edits to address fiscal management, there's a few of them to work in accordance with financial oversight committees. So fiscal management change, financial records change, both of those were with that. Some small changes to the procurement card program manual. I believe Director Horn Fraser brought up to come back with a small change for emergency situations. That was you, right? Because we've talked about that. The classic example recently was the City High.
Yeah, I think several of us have talked about that, and Director Abraham.
Sorry, Director Abrahams for leaving you out.
So Director Lingo, we're gonna pull that from the action item?
Yeah, we're gonna end up pulling it.
Okay.
Along with 2 other items. And I'll get to those. There were changes to the payment goods and services, some internal controls changes, and an email retention piece added for 3 years of retention. I believe they went with Mr. Reynolds' recommendation. I don't know his title. What is it? Technology manager, because when we went with 3 years just because of the cost. And it's restricted administrators. Then that is it, and we will be tabling that one until next time when we get to that moment. Then we are moving on to the 900s policies. These are just small policy edits to change designee to either deputy superintendent or chief operating officer. Then the financial oversight committee charger. There was a small change that we made to that, which, well, there are a couple changes. One of it that you see in front of you, the one was that the Board of Education members, we have the liaison. We are going to change that from 1 consistent liaison to 2 consistent liaisons. The idea behind that is so that those board members have an idea of what's going on. We were talking about rotating one of the members, but if we're rotating like every month or every other month, then it's like, we also narrowed down to 6 times a year. There was I'm trying to find it in here. The audit oversight, instead of review and approval, it is review and recommend approval of audit scope on that note. And there is one change that we will come back to. We want to pass it tonight, but there's a smaller change. Director Horn Fraser, can you reiterate it for me?
It's just about how to handle in the future when we have somebody who may need to resign midterm, and some specific language on how to handle that, but we have what we need in order to get this committee into place now, and we want to go ahead and do that.
Yep. So that's kind of where we're at on that. So if there's any questions on the Financial Oversight Committee charter that you see, then we are moving on to Policy 207, Board of Directors Legal Counsel. That will be another one that we will come back to. There were questions on the need for the policy, and if we do, as a committee, believe that there is a need, we still need to determine what a significant cost is. And we talked about using the billable minutes and how many minutes that would be, like an estimate, because I believe it's every 6 minutes is what gets billed. I'm no lawyer, but that's what I've been told. So we'll come back to that one, so we'll pull 207. Then we are moving on to 303.2. This is the Administrator Qualifications Recruitment Appointment. We agreed with everything that's in the green on this, for the most part, I believe, except we are stuck as a committee on the second bullet point, and that is the number of school board members that may participate in the interview committee, and then the number, and then what their involvement looks like, how far down or deep it should go. Should it go to building level administrators? Should it just go to the executive committee team or the executive directors of the superintendent? So how deep in the weeds? So we're kind of stuck on that right now. We'll come back to it on the next one. So 303.2 will also be pulled for another meeting. And then 303.4, this is one that's been sitting around since March. The first iteration was March and it wasn't great. It was the one that I came up with. So you can take that one, self-evaluation. But we came to this one and we agreed that it is ready to go for a vote. And I believe that finishes it up. If there are any questions or comments.
It's a really good summary, Mitch.
Thank you. Now I have to remember it for the next meeting in June.
All right. Thank you so much, Director Lingo. That takes us to our discussion items. And the first discussion item is the Chief Financial Officer update from CFO Moore. Welcome. This is Pat Moore's first official meeting with us, so welcome to ICCSD.
Thank you. 9 days in, by the way.
9 days.
As you know, Kim is on vacation right now, so you get to hear from me tonight. Keep in mind, again, 9 days in, so contextually wise, I don't have the institutional knowledge about Iowa City yet. I will get there. First of all, we'll talk about the FY24 audit. Last week on Tuesday, we sat down with Bonsack and Fromelt and got the initial information. As it is in draft status, I can't really comment on a lot of it. A lot of things that you will hear about are things that you've already talked about at your board meeting, so there's not going to be any surprises there. Next step, internally, we're actually going through the audit page by page, looking for typos, looking for anything that we may have comments on. If there's grammatical errors or anything as such, we're going through all those. Compiling the comments and the questions, and we'll send those back to the auditors, and then once that's done, a final report will be put together. The intention at this point was the July board meeting. The auditors will be here to present the audit to you, so any questions that you have, you can ask the auditors. At that point, once it's accepted by the board and considered final, we file that with the state, so we can check mark off fiscal 24 audit done. Next step, they'll be back in August to do the field work for the fiscal 25 audit. Same thing, once the initial audit is done, we'll get everything internally, we'll meet with them, go through all the processes. Once that's done, they'll come back to the board. The intent is they'll be at your November board meeting, which would be your FY25 audit. At that point, I think you've discussed in prior board meetings, it could be appropriate at that point, once it's filed, that the board would apply for bond rating. So that's another check mark. So 24 audit, 25 audit. 26 auditor, they will be on site during the winter, follow the same procedures, go through, meet with us, present everything, and my hopes, although I've not conveyed this to them yet, since we're only one of their clients, is I would love if we could have everything done back to the board in March and approved and sent to the state by the 3/31 deadline, which would mean we would be compliant again, 24, 25, any 26 audits completed. A couple other things to mention, internal work. Bank reconciliations are complete, 23, 24, and 25. General fund is up through fall of 25. Activity fund, I actually believe Reagan stayed tonight and got it through May, so that's up to date as well. All FY26 bank statements, the intent is that in a couple of weeks we will be current. Bond payment, the bond payment will be coming out of our account this Thursday, so that will be made. I know that's been talked about at prior board meetings, that has been taken care of. Internally, I'm just starting to learn things, so I'm just starting the FY27 line item budget process, which is going to be pretty big, but pretty excited about that. Just sharing a couple of parting comments since I'm pretty new to this. Staff have been very busy, not only on the FY26, but they've also been between fiscal years accompanying the audit process. Personally, I spent a few days prior to coming here because I wanted to meet the staff and see how they interacted with each other, what their job was, do they have what they need, all of those things. And the one critical piece that I wanted to know is, as we've heard tonight and everywhere else, a lot of negativity coming into work, hearing that constantly. So my question to them was, what brings you to work every single day? And there's two things I wanted to share with you. One of them was their team. They love their team. They love being part of that team. The other thing that was resounding across everyone I talked to was their belief in the Iowa City Community School District and what it stands for and what it has stood for. So just know that there are people internally that completely believe in this district and think that we're headed in a great direction. That's just my personal take from 9 days on the job. One last shout out, if I might. Kurt Pratt, I know he's going to kill me, but I would not still be here without him. He's been a lifeline, so I appreciate him very much. Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you.
Are there
I would open it up for questions or comments from directors. Go ahead, Director Eastham.
Thank you very much, President Malone, and thank you, Pat, for an outstanding first report and for being here and taking the steps you've taken to do so that we can continue to be one of the best districts in the state. I really appreciate that, and I really welcome your approach.
Thank you. I feel very fortunate to be here. Thank you.
I want to second that and the welcome, and how glad I am to see you in this role, and appreciate your efforts to get up to speed really quickly. And I apologize if this is outside of what you're prepared to talk about. I was just looking at the reports, the update, the summary of progress as of May 22nd, and I had one question, and I don't know, again, if it's something you have a ready answer for, and I understand if you don't. There was a comment about something that was found in the audit in FY23 about a surtax that was counted as it should have been accounted as revenue, and instead of an expenditure or something like that. And I was just curious, there wasn't a context for the size of that. And I know that one of the things that you found, that has been found during this whole process, is that sometimes our starting financial position is different one way or the other from what we initially found. I was just curious if you had any comments on that, since that was in that last report. I just hadn't seen anything.
I probably couldn't comment on that, complete honesty
Right.
with you, just coming in contextually. I just kind of sat into that audit meeting for the first time
Okay.
and wasn't surprised by anything. Like I said, not surprised, but I would not be able to answer that for you.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just so pleased with the progress, and then the note at the end of that same report that the goal to start FY27 with the full implementation of the new monthly close processes. I think it's just terrific. So thank you for your contributions to that, and looking forward to a strong next year.
Me as well.
Director
Yeah.
Lincoln?
Thank you, and congratulations and welcome to your first board meeting.
Thank you.
I have some questions, and I don't know where the Venn diagram of what Kim put together and what you put together, and so if you need to come back to it through an email or something, please just let me know. So it said in one of the documents about the FY23 audit needing to be restated and refiled. Will that be done through the municipal bond registry and federal audit clearinghouse and those kind of things?
I would not be able to answer
Okay,
that.
that's
Complete
fine.
honesty, can
So-
get back to you on that.
Yeah, that's fine. And this one's probably come back to you, but since it looks like we're pretty far along in the investments, we've seen any unusual drawdowns or anything like that over the past 3 years?
Again,
It's fine.
Sorry.
No. And that'll be it then. Thank you.
okay, I can get those back to you though.
I
Thank you for
appreciate
your
it.
questions.
Welcome again. I know you're 9 days in, but can you share your thoughts regarding, is there anything within the business office that we should be considering updating? We heard from Kim Michael Lee that our system that we're using is one that she has never seen. It's not very intuitive, so I would love to get your 9-day experience with it, feedback on it if you can.
I've worked with multiple systems, both on our current finance system as well as others. There are very robust systems out there. I think the thing that I've talked with HR as well, as far as finding a platform that actually works for not only finance, payroll, HR, all of those modules versus multiples. So I think moving forward, that is something that we're going to be discussing as far as what works best for the district and awfully fiduciary responsibilities behind that as well. So it wouldn't just be we're going to flip a switch. It'd be a lot of conversations with a lot of different departments.
All right, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for raising that point, President Malone. I've wondered too about if we have an accounting software system that actually works as well as we need it to work.
There are quite a few of them out there. The ones that have a lot of robust, obviously, are very costly.
Yeah.
So I would go into that very lightly as far as what works best for the district. And again, check in with all departments to make sure everyone's represented.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you. That takes us to our next discussion item, which is the interim superintendent search. Some items were added. I received those, Sunday night. I did not see them until this morning, so my apologies that they got added earlier this morning. But it's just an open discussion on next steps for the interim search. As you can see from what Grundemeyer, they helped with our CFO search, and one of the things that they can do is either recruit and provide references all the way up to conduct the entire search for us or assist us with the entire search. So I'm just looking for our board to discuss on what's the expectations for next steps. I will just throw out there that whatever we decide to do, one of the caveats I would like to have in place that whoever the interim is will not be considered, if we can do that, and I don't know if Christy Latta wants to chime in, should not have intention to apply for the permanent position.
I think that'd be fine. I don't think that's probably anything you need to require, one way or the other at the outset, but I think that's a fine expectation to have.
I would agree with that. I also want to just make the case for, no matter what we decide to do with respect to this firm for this interim search, to not engage at this point in any kind of package that is interim plus full term or full replacement. I would not feel comfortable making that commitment without exploring other options of other firms.
That's fair, yeah. I agree with that.
And I think having a firm do the search clearly is where we're at, what we need to do. I don't think that's something we can just sort of ask people and see, because that, hasn't worked. So, and we are on a fairly tight timeline too.
I'm with Molly on that and everyone else. As fast as we can get those turnaround is where I'm kind of at, to find someone that's competent and that we can get them in the door quick.
I agree with that general approach, and I want us to go as rapidly, at a pace that's as rapid as possible, and also, and I'm sure we will, I don't have any doubt about this at all, we'll take whatever time we need in order to make a good offer.
Director Finch.
This is Jan here, trying to interject a little bit. Obviously this needs to happen rather swiftly. However, I was a little bit confused that there was no resignation for approval on the consent agenda today, which is why I did not approve the overall agenda for the meeting. So we have our legal counsel on the line. Do we have any comments about pursuing a search in the absence of an accepted, approved resignation by the board?
Well, I think by virtue of approving the transfer, you've agreed to an early release of contract. That would be, I think, the way that you would consider this. If there's any question about that, we can certainly, have there be some sort of ratification or some other, formal measure to solidify that action. But I don't think it would preclude you from moving forward with a search.
Yeah, I was a little bit confused about the explanation given to me about why there wasn't a resignation up for approval on the personnel agenda today, because, if we look at other positions that were on the personnel agenda, there were resignations that went along with approvals for the new job. So I just didn't understand why there was no resignation for the board to approve at this meeting. And if we are able to add that to our action items at the end of the meeting, I would be in favor of that.
All right. Any other comments?
All right, Christy?
Oh.
Christy, are we able to add that as an action item at the end of our meeting?
Well, I mean, I think what I would prefer is to have that be just something that's ratified as part of the personnel agenda, so that you're able to say, you know, just to clarify that that's the meaning there, is that obviously one can't hold two contracts at the same time, and that this is an early release from the first into the second. You know, I don't have a problem with clarifying that. I obviously will defer to, you know, your board as a whole and board leadership and all of that as to what the meaning and true intent of that agenda item was.
Okay. Okay, sure, exactly. And that's exactly why I wondered why there was no resignation listed on the personnel agenda. So I'll bring it up at agenda setting. I think that should be listed on our very next meeting in the personnel agenda. Thank you, Christy.
Director Finch, I have a question about that. I appreciate you raising that topic. I am looking at the personnel agenda right now just to look at some other examples, and I do see examples of other staff members being listed as moving from one position to another that does not have the same title, and it's not just simply like a lane change or something like that, and I'm not seeing corresponding resignations, I don't think, for them. And so I was assuming that this one was being handled in the very same manner. And so I just wanted to point that out. I'm not sure if that's helpful or not.
Does that say salary adjustment?
Yes, they're all listed under recommend for salary adjustments, moving from one position to a different titled position with salary TBD for all of them.
Yeah, I mean, I would think when we're talking about an office of superintendent moving to executive director level, that that would be more than just a salary adjustment. It, in my opinion, was a misrepresentation on our personnel agenda today. So I think the sooner we can get that cleared up, the better.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other comments? One of the things, I'm sorry, if there's not, one of the things that we can do, we had June 2nd held for a potential board work session with representatives from the Iowa Association of School Board. Hopefully that's still held on folks' calendars. We can have a special meeting that night to approve or ratify the personnel agenda, as mentioned by Director Finch, and the proposed interim superintendent search. I see head nods.
That seems okay to me.
Sounds good to me.
All right. So that will be the plan. Next up is the organizational chart update. And I don't know if we have any notes from any of our district leadership, because I know Superintendent Degner couldn't be here unexpectedly, or Deputy Superintendent Ramey. I don't know if anything was shared. I'm just not looking at you, I'm just looking over there in general. All right.
Could we continue this or continue that out
Yeah,
of
we
the
can also move this to June 2nd as well. And I can communicate that with Superintendent Degner so we can have an official org chart listed.
Thanks very much, President Malone.
That takes us to our presentation of the night, which is Special Education Review. And again, I'm just looking over there because I don't know which one is doing. Not calling on anyone from the classroom.
It's okay. Good evening, directors. This is obviously a request and a good topic to bring up as we work through our financial situation and making decisions moving forward. We've got three different topics tonight. We'll do kind of an overview to set the groundwork for how special education funding and expenses work within Iowa K-12 schools. We'll look at our special ed supplement review, which is our annual report we have to file with the state from a finance standpoint. And then we'll talk about our Department of Ed information requests that we've been working through the past few months. Before I get too deep, though, we do have multiple people who are going to participate in this. I'll be the one standing here, but Eliza and Lucas have helped craft this presentation. We've got some coordinators with us if they want to take a moment and introduce themselves. If you have more specific questions, they may be better able to answer than I do. So if you guys want to take a minute and introduce yourselves.
Thank you. My name is Jake Vitens. I'm a coordinator in special education. I work most closely with our social, emotional, and behavioral health students.
Lisa Ann Johnson, secondary coordinator. I support our principals and our lead support teachers in part of our special education classes in the secondary buildings.
Tanya Vitens, elementary coordinator. As Lisa Ann said, I do those supports at the elementary level.
Thanks, guys. They didn't know I was going to make them do that, so they handled that beautifully. So let's start with the overview. So special education is a part of the general fund. It is not a specific categorical. It's more just a account code structure within the general fund overall. We do receive state aid, federal IDEA funds, and local property taxes. So all students receive general education funding, and then they're supplementary weighted based on their level, which is based on need to generate revenue to fund those programs. We'll get into those weights here in a minute, but then there's also random other funds that help provide revenue for these programs through IDEA Part B, Medicaid reimbursement, and other claims we can make through the state, whether that's high cost fund, termination of rights claims, whatever. Also, at the end of this presentation, if you're following along, there's an appendix that has a little better definition of some of these terms that if I don't give you a definition and you don't see it at the back, just say so, and we'll go over it. So for weighting, we talked about level 1, level 2, level 3. I think that's a pretty common understanding for most folks involved in education. It's based on the intensity of services required through their IEP. The weighting currently for level 1 student is 1.72. Statutorily within the legislature, it could be 1.8, but the SBRC is the one that gets to set that every year, and those haven't changed for a long time. The 1.8 was set in the 70s, but it's been 1.72 for a while. I see Molly nodding her head that it goes back. Ironically, for level 2 students, it's 2.21. But statutorily it was limited at 2.2, so the SBRC was able to exceed that for whatever reason. I don't know why that one was different than the others. Level 3 students are weighted at 3.74, but statutorily it could be up to 4.4. Again, what that means is when we get our base cost per pupil, so say that's $8,000 per student, for level 3 students, we're given 8,000 times 3.74, so we'd get just over $24,000 for that state cost per pupil on that one, and that's primarily our largest source of revenue to fund special education programs. So with that, as with everything, it's based on the number of students we have. And so you can see the past 3 years, our trends overall. So we're trending upward in our level 1 students that are full-time, holding steady, I would say, at level 2 with minor growth, and then level 3 we're down from where we have been. And keep in mind, this is FY23 through 25, so this is not any data that is reflective of this current year. So our revenues, you can see there's one big primary generator. Again, it's that weighted student funding. Special education tuition, that next group of columns there, those are those students that are coming to us from other districts. Those districts then pay us the tuition for those students. Medicaid reimbursements, our next biggest thing. That's really important. We need to stay on top of that and make sure we're capturing as many claims as we can. We have recently switched to ClaimAid to help assist with that, and so they're moving us to electronic logs, which is an adjustment, not going to sugarcoat it. There's an adjustment to that our pairs and our teachers are being asked to input data electronically to track hours so that we get reimbursed for those. But do want to stress that is very important to help us generate revenue that helps us reduce that deficit that we've been having.
I'm sorry, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
have they received training in order to do that?
Yep, we've been going building by building and hosting and holding training.
And any schedule changes to ensure that they have time during the day to actually input that data?
That's a better question for the team over there, I would say.
Yeah, we actually just, every building has gone through training, just to finish that up, because that's just a change that we made recently. And so we actually spent quite a bit of time in our elementary principal meeting just last week, talking through logistics of when was it working, because the student, the paraeducator that works with the student is the one that has to fill that out. And so sometimes it's, we need to, and it's done in like 15-minute increments. And so sometimes it's, okay, we're going to break up in the half day. And then when you transition from student A to student B, then we're going to go ahead and enter that in. We've also toyed with, for really short times that they're with the student, maybe doing that on paper so that you can still get all the anecdotal notes and then going in afterwards and entering in it. And so we've just been really working through the kinks as we've been implementing this for 2-3 weeks maybe. Okay. But they're getting ideas for what's going to be, I mean, it's the conversations is where we're going to keep the Chromebook. How is it going to be access? Is it going to be where they clock in the library? So all those different pieces. But we've definitely been working through just kind of those trials and tribulations of what's working and what's not.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
You're fine.
Kurt, kind of a follow-up question. Do you think you're at the point where you have a pretty good idea of how staff is doing with entering that information?
I think we're doing pretty good overall. I know there's been frustration overall, which is warranted with the change in the middle school year. I'd be the first to admit that that's not an easy change to make in, end of April or beginning of May when summer's so close and we won't make that change. But we did want to capture as much as we could immediately within that reporting structure. And then we'll revisit again in the fall. I know we've talked about, from the training perspective, making that a piece of our onboarding with orientation that happens here at the district office, that if we know either a teacher or a paraeducator is going to be working in a special education environment, that we just go ahead and train them here so they can go to the building and have that rolling. And so I think that's one of the things we'll probably look to implement this summer to make sure that it's not onerous on the buildings to make that training happen.
Director Easting, we also know that the contract day for paraeducators looks different than teachers, so we don't have the amount of contact time with them that we would with our teachers before or after the school day. We also know that our turnover rate with our paras is higher than that with teachers, so we will have to come up with a plan to onboard, just as Kurt had mentioned, our new staff.
Okay, thank you very much.
So then, as we flip over to the expenses side, and again, the graphs on the side are just a pie chart so you can see that how each year looks from a percentage standpoint. But biggest generator, again, as we've talked about with a lot of things this year, salary and benefits being our largest single expense. If I scroll back, you can see, our weighted cost per pupil, we generated just under $25 million in FY25, and our salaries are over $25 million alone, not including benefits or some of these other things that are expenses. So again, salary and benefits, self-explanatory. Transportation, any transportation that is special ed specific. So whether that's wheelchair accessible buses or other routes that are specific to special ed can be billed back towards special ed. General program percentage. Within the account code structure, there's an opportunity to have costs just like we do for elementary-wide, district-wide, secondary-wide, middle school-wide. There's a special ed-wide account code structure, and that's that general program percentage number you see there that's kind of billed across the whole thing. And then tuition out is our students who are receiving services at other districts. Then DE expenditure adjustments are things that they have changed for us as we submit within our system. So any questions on the expense side or the categories? So then I think the impetus for this discussion was the significant increase we saw from FY24 to FY25. And this is just a line item generalized list overall. our teacher salary supplement, about a $1.2 million increase. That can be confusing. We didn't increase what we were giving. We actually pulled that out of our special ed salaries for our teachers. And so by pulling that out, but we obviously kept their rate of pay the same, that increased our deficit, if that makes sense. So we pulled that part out, and that became a higher deficit overall because we weren't using those TSS funds for special education teachers.
Where'd the funds get used elsewhere?
So they would have just gone
into the general
into general
fund.
fund, yeah, any other expenditure out of the general fund. Behavior interventionists, the district made a concerted effort to add behavior interventionists within this time period. The obvious expansion of the preschool program, which continued on again for this fiscal year. There was a decision to include nursing salaries within the special ed deficit because a portion of those services can be billed back to special ed. So that was added back into that.
So it's just a portion of their nursing?
Correct.
Okay.
It's not all of their salary.
I'll let you go through the list and then I'll ask my question. Okay. I don't wanna.
Paraeducator wage increases, obviously, all of our salaries and benefits are subject to our negotiated agreements. That's where this is. Same thing with teacher wage increases. Proper identification of supplies and equipment. I think this was a concerted effort among the team to try to make sure they were capturing those things within that were special ed specific to those special ed funds. Preschool transportation, a small percentage. Again, general program percentage is kind of our overall line items. And then there was one tuition classified as contract services. This was simply a mistake within the business office of paying tuition out as a contract service that got reported within this fund. So that theoretically shouldn't have been there, and we've communicated that with the state and are awaiting any further guidance from them on that. Director Lingo, go ahead.
Could you give us, and the public that are listening, because I've heard those questions multiple times throughout just special ed in general, what is the difference between a behavioral interventionist and a paraprofessional? The job, training, qualifications, and pay?
So I work closely with our behavior interventionists. The biggest difference between the behavior interventionists and the paras is that ongoing training component that our behavior interventionists receive. So they are also their qualifications too. So they're bachelor's, bachelor's preferred, where our paras are, we get all sorts of different applicants with our paraeducators. And then in terms of the ongoing training, our paraeducators, like Lucas noted earlier, we don't have a ton of time with them, beginning of the year with their contract being different. So a lot of that training is just going to be as needed, and it'll be specific to the student or students that they're working with. So not all of our paras, necessarily work in the area of behavior. For example, they might work with a student who has medical needs or something like that. So their training would be very much different from a para who's working in the area of behavior. Our behavior interventionists, they have that ongoing training, like I said, so we have time with them at the beginning of the school year during some of their contract days before the start of the school year to do some professional learning. And then we also have some time throughout the year, so like those Thursday afternoons, we might have some professional learning opportunities, but then a big part of their job is our lead support teachers support them on a daily basis with job embedded coaching. So they might be working right alongside them to say, hey, here's a student who's struggling. How might we do a preference assessment? How might we work with this team to improve the student's plan? Did I get at your question there?
Yeah, I think so. Appreciate it.
Could I just follow that up with another question about the BIs? I noticed there has been a large increase from 18 to 25 to 39, and I'm just wondering if we are seeing an impact, if there truly is a need for that many or that increase in the behavior interventionalists, and if I could get any more information or comments on that.
One of the reasons that we've increased those BIs is because of the admin feedback. These have been we hear a lot of good things about our BIs, and it's specifically to help with some of the safety concerns in the buildings. So I know that some of the conversation that the board's been a part of and our administration has been about safety concerns with teachers. So this has really been, an area that we've leaned into to get some training for having a staff member in that building. So the increase is mostly with our building BIs. So they we've increased our secondary ones and our elementary ones to have them be less shared across the district. So that would be the kind of the short answer to the increase. The piece I'd want to highlight in terms of like the impact would be our Chapter 103 numbers have remained very low over the years. So we're right on par with where we were last year at this time with having very low numbers of 103 reports. Our staff injury reports, that's something that we've been diving into as a team as well. I don't have numbers on those to kind of say, has it made an impact or not, but that's something else that we could dive into as well.
Thank you.
So Kurt, for my understanding, as I understand it, this slide that shows significant increases from FY 24 to 25, the increase is about $7.2 million. As I understand it, that increase reflects increased services to kids.
I mean, I'll lean on the team. I would say for the most part, I think we would agree with that statement. I see some head nodding over there.
Okay. And that increased services is in part increasing the number of people, trained people who are providing their education, their special education to kids who are qualified and need it.
Yep.
Is that right? Okay.
I think that the one part here, though, is that these kind of increases, we need to be careful to make sure that we have the cash to pay for them if we're going to do it over a one-year period versus moving it slowly over time.
Sure.
Yeah, and I appreciate that's a consideration, certainly. However, as I understand it, this data indicates that we are having a need to increase our services to kids who qualify for special education, and this is what we did.
I mean, I would generally agree with that, but we didn't have the cash, and that is how we ended up in this situation.
Well, I think that's what we want to look at a little bit more thoroughly as we get into our SBRC request.
Sure. So then, as Director Finch mentioned, this is some of our staffing levels that were reported out, and you can just see where we've been. Certainly, behavior interventionists increased overall. Preschool teachers, preschool paraeducators, obviously that was a concerted effort to expand those programs as well. Any specific questions on any of this overall?
For FY26, do we see anything substantial? And I didn't put this one ahead of time, so I apologize if you don't have.
I don't know that we've broken it out for our FY26 numbers that we're kind of tracking. I don't know that we've broken it out to this level. Within that, we certainly can and report back.
And I just realized that FY26 isn't over, and you're probably
it's a
you've
moving
added
target right now.
It's probably a moving target until you're. So I apologize on that.
We do anticipate a little bit with the preschool piece because this FY20, so the fiscal year 25 would reflect that 24-25 school year when we were doing the pilot with those 6 full days. And so there will be a little bit of an adjustment with the preschool paraeducator and preschool teachers. However, one thing to note is that we did already have full-time teachers. The FTE was there. They're just teaching full day instead of the 2 half-day sections because we're offering that full day. But we did get to add preschool teachers in order to allow for that full-day preschool at every one of our sites.
Thank you. Can you go back one slide? And I have one other question. And I see that we have the paraeducator wage increases and teacher wage increases with our negotiated agreements for FY26 exceeding what we thought they were going to be. That will grow for fiscal by the end of this year as well, right?
I would assume so, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Did we have any increase in other paraeducators or only the preschool paraeducators?
Director Fincher, you talked about the supervisory paras that exist within the building as well? Or just special education?
I'm talking about I'm talking about the staffing level slide that shows there was an increase in the preschool paraeducators, but there's no mention of any increase in other paraeducators.
Like overall?
So you're talking about
Overall,
special
right.
ed paraeducators?
Yeah, just special ed from K through 12 outside of preschool.
Yes, there was an increase of those as well.
We just don't have those numbers. The numbers that we pulled from here are direct from the
What the state
state
requests.
required and requested.
The numbers that I asked for earlier today, it was question number 8. With those numbers, it showed FY '23 526, FY '24 560, and FY '25 585. Were those special education paraeducators only, or did they?
Those are special education paraeducators.
so-
I guess we should have explained this a little bit better at the beginning. I apologize for that. These were the positions that the state had asked us to define when they have been reviewing a majority of the UEN's deficits. So this wasn't just a unique thing to Iowa City. And so this is what they had asked for. So those are just the descriptions. But as Director Lingo mentioned, he did ask some other questions. And so we did see an increase. The number of paraeducators that we're going to have in a given year is really hard to predict because that's dependent on the IEP team's decision on whether or not a student's, needs that paraeducator support and what that might look like for a student throughout the year. But just from FY '23 to '25, there was an increase of about 60 paraeducators.
And I think that's
Okay.
I'm sorry, Jane, are you finished?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I was just trying to reconcile the numbers from the staffing level slide to the slide that was prior to that showed that the increase in paraeducator wages increased by nearly a million. So I knew that there were some numbers left out there, and I was just trying to clean that up a little bit. Thank you. You answered my question.
Okay. So Eliza, I think that's a good point you're talking about there, is that the number of paraeducators that are needed for special education instructional work is in fact, has to follow their IEP plans. And that IEP plan is a key thing that we do as a district to make sure that every kid who qualifies for special education gets it.
Yep, and it would be the IEP team who, none of us are part of a student's IEP team typically, but whatever the IEP team decides in terms of how to best meet that student's needs and what they need in order to access core instruction.
Right. Thank you.
So with that, we'll transition into our discussion on information that we've been requested and provided to the Department of Education. Executive Director Proctor kind of mentioned it. We had an initial information request as to why our deficit grew so much, which was some of the information that we just talked about, but then we received a subsequent request to provide more information and more narrative on some of the things that were in that initial submission. But what also came of that was pretty much all the UEN districts were asked to go back and verify either staffing levels, expenditure data, or whatever the state might have wanted more information on. So there was a large email string among UEN CFOs. We had, I think, 3,800 lines of expenditures that a lot of the team over there went through and said, yes, this is a verified expense. But I think Davenport, just one I remember off the top of my head, they had over 5,000. So some of the data we're presenting is something that a lot of the UEN districts had to go through overall. So we were not alone in that. So roughly a timeline, in December, we had our initial request for information, and then in March 2026, they came back to us with more requests for information that was much more specific and detailed. And so the team did a great job of pulling that together and providing that back to the state, which we did in April. As we sit here right now, there's about an email, seems like every week within the UEN CFOs that nobody's received any information back. We've been told that this will be a part of our June 9th SBRC meeting, that the Department of Education staff is going to present their findings to the SBRC. We have no indication that any action will be taken with that, but we don't have confirmation that there won't be action, if that makes sense. We'll obviously be there for our own appearance, so we'll obviously stick around for this portion of the meeting, but everybody's kind of waiting across the state to understand what the outcome of this data request is going to be. So this was just the observations and the narrative requests of paraprofessionals, which we've obviously spent some time this evening discussing. They compared what our FTEs were for our paraprofessionals versus what our enrollment was. They believed we were an outlier with a 1-to-3 ratio, meaning for every 3 special education students, we had 1 paraeducator. We don't have any indication of what a normal ratio on that is. We would need to work through potentially with our UAN partners or the state to get guidance on that. But they did flag us on that. And so this was our team's response. And again, this is much of the discussion we just had within the last 10 minutes here. You know, it's a building level decision, meeting the needs of the IEP for the student and whatnot. Anything anybody over there want to add on that?
Yeah, I think it's important, and I will let Lisa Ann and Tanya to talk a little bit about this, but it's important to just highlight the work that our coordinators and our lead support teachers have been doing with our case managers, our teachers around the student independent mapping, which is what's talked in here about the SIM, because it has been a tremendous amount of work that has some really positive impacts, because our goal is for every student to be independent and to be able to be a part of their classroom just as their same age peers. And so I'll let them talk a little bit about what that SIM process looks like.
Thanks. Yes. Where do you want me to start? 4 or 5 years ago, we started to kind of dig into the role of a paraprofessional and the impact it can have for students and along with the importance of it. Research shows there's also considerations that teams need to think about in the sense of how it can affect students socially, emotionally, self-esteem, those sorts of things. So it's a really important decision that IEP teams carry. And so to help support our teams in really thinking through that, a group of educators put together what we called the Student Independence Map. And we named it that intentionally because we wanted the focus to be on students and the importance of building their independence versus necessarily that para-fading or that para role. In that student independence map, like I said, what that entails is gathering teams in collecting data and information around what are the specific needs of the student, what are all of the different ways we can support those needs, whether it's through accommodations, whether it's through peer supports, or whether there are adult supports that are necessary. So really having teams dissect that and think about that. And then once we come up with those, coming together and talking through and thinking through what does that mean to then provide students those skills and supports that will help them become independent with those skills that they might be lacking or needing support with. And so again, keeping that focus on building the skills of the students so that eventually over time, they have more control over their own learning, their environment, their setting, but we utilize the resources that we have very intentionally to get them there along the way.
I might add from a secondary perspective, we've started this work as well. We are not quite as far as our elementary team who started this work, but when we're thinking about secondary, we're thinking about how are we supporting students with their post-secondary needs beyond high school, which then has us thinking about what are those skills that students need to develop in the community. We have to be very flexible in designing what a day looks like to meet those complex needs our students bring. And then I would also share just that structure at secondary as well, thinking about our continuum of services. We have co-teaching classes that are available that also helps to reduce the number of paraeducators that need to support students within those classes because we have a gen ed teacher and a special education teacher collaborating on supporting the accommodations and modifications for our students. And then lastly, I think it's been said, but I cannot impress the importance of the IEP team and then the partnerships we have on that team with families, gen ed teachers, other service providers like our special education social workers coming together to look at that data and determine what is the need for our students and creating that least restrictive environment as much as we can. Those are hard, heavy conversations at times, and we're really making them at the best interest of our students to ensure their success. And I know that our paraeducators and our case managers do a lot of that heavy lifting to help support students, and we want to make sure that we're making the right decision at that IEP table together with the families.
Thanks, guys. So then this was, again, just an explanation of the proper identification of supplies and equipment and what expenses were for special education. We'll talk more about this maybe a little later. Behavior interventionists, again, we've talked about this. I don't know if the team over there has anything they want to add on that. I feel like we covered that one pretty well overall. Nurse salaries, again, not their full salaries, but to the extent that we're available and they're able to provide services for either chronic health conditions or other IEP needs, or within Medicaid. Again, it's just a proportion. And then tuition misclassified as contract services, again, as we discussed, just simply a wrong coding on a payment that then resulted in an expense. So the last piece, then we'll open up for questions, was our expenditure review. Again, that was that 3,800 line item file that we had to review. The team did a great job going through that. It was kind of all over the place in terms of very minor things versus some larger things. Some of the larger things I can remember was some transportation that the state had flagged for whatever reason. And transportation, as far as special education goes, the minute a general education student steps onto that vehicle or bus, it becomes a general education vehicle. It is no longer able to be billed as a special education vehicle. And so I think some of it was some confusion on that overall. But you can see the total is just the total amount that the state had flagged within our submission that needed our response. We indicated yes to about 97, almost 98%. Some of the things we indicated no on just because there was either a lack of documentation or as we read through the guidance overall on what's an allowable expenditure, it was determined, at least from the leadership team, that that should not have been coded as a special education expense. So again, this is one of those things that we're waiting on to hear back from the state of what are the next steps going to be within this. So with that, any other questions or discussion or other information people would like to have for this topic?
Go ahead, Director.
What kind of internal controls and audits does the school district have for reviewing special education finances and independent reviews of the special ed departments?
Yeah, so a lot of this information came from our SES, and I just realized I didn't pull up a table that I should have. Kim had it pulled up for me, I didn't. So to answer your question, this is our special education balance sheet. This is for each of the past 3 fiscal years. This outlines everything of where we spend and then spits out our deficit or surplus if we were to have it. So through the CAR and through this is kind of how we're accountable to the state overall. Internally within the district, it's a similar process and procedure that we have for any other expenditure in terms of there's typically an approval tree of a teacher may request a supplier expense. It then goes to the special education team. They approve it, submit it, and then it's purchased if it's an allowable expense. So overall, that's kind of the 2 mechanisms, either on a day-to-day standpoint or on an annual standpoint.
And how do you verify that the services described in the IEP are actually provided and the expenses are accurately accounted for?
So I'm going to throw that to that team.
So that would be, thank Thank you, Lucas. That would be primarily the responsibility of that case manager or that special education teacher to ensure that what is written into an IEP is what is delivered for that student, as well as collaboration with the general education teacher. The principal at that building obviously has oversight as well as to ensure that what a student's IEP, how a student's IEP is written and how it's enacted. And then, of course, support through our lead support teachers and then our special ed coordinators if there's questions or concerns if as the way an IEP is written or the things that have been purchased and utilized if they are or are not being utilized to the extent that the IEP determines.
To continue on, and I know that because of open enrollment and policies like that, how is our, how have we increased the number of students with IEPs that are coming from other school districts?
So, based on the data we pulled, it looks like we've increased about 19, 20 students, give or take, from FY23 to 25. Again, we're able to build those districts for those services that we provide to the student. And so that isn't necessarily a drain on our own resources because we are able to recoup that.
So if we go into deficit spending, it gets reflected into those school districts, or how does that work?
So it shows up on their report the same way it does ours.
Okay.
When we looked at those, we have a tuition in outline on the revenue side and a tuition outline on the expense side. And so they would have the same thing on their side.
Got it. And how has the number of students with IEPs and 504s changed over the past several fiscal years? Total numbers.
They've increased, and so if we look at the number of students that have IEPs from the fiscal year 23 to 25, we went from 1224 to 1499, so about 1,500 students. Students with IEPs have grown from 693 in 2023 to 796 in 2025. And so both of those students that receive accommodations with a 504 plan and students that receive, that have an IEP, those have increased.
Those second numbers you gave were 504s.
504s, yes.
Okay.
I think that covers my questions. Thank you, Kurt.
So Kurt, looking at this this final slide here, showing special education expenditures and revenues for FY23, 24, 25. This slide shows that for FY25, for the special education expenditures and revenue, we were about $8 million roughly of revenue under expenditures for 25, about $8 million more than in 23 and 24. So the deficit, or the cost of providing special education was less than our revenue for paid for the special education by some $8 billion in 25, that above the previous years. So do we, how should we try to address that difference between revenue and expenditure?
That's a tremendous question. And given that most districts, I mean, we spot checked a few this morning to see other deficits that, I mean, most districts, I would hazard a guess, even over 90% across the state probably run a deficit within special education. It is not uncommon by any means. You know, unfortunately, we're doing everything we can to meet the needs of the students, but there's not always funding that reflects those.
Right, and I think you've made a very great case here tonight that what we are doing for the educational needs of special education students is appropriate for every student in this district.
Yeah. But I mean, we, as with anything, we'll just have to be judicious as we move forward and have those conversations that we need to have about what the appropriate levels are.
So I'm hearing that one part of the a response is that increased focus on the Medicaid coding and reimbursement. I understand that that's not a huge amount. And so I guess, do you see, but incremental efforts matter.
Every little bit helps.
Add up.
Words I live by right now.
Right. And so I'm curious, are there any other, even if they're small, like places where you're looking for those kinds of efficiencies, or just better tracking to get more reimbursement, or anything else like along those lines?
Yeah, she didn't know I was going to call her, but our new CFO, Ms. Moore, I have high hopes within her taking over some of our special ed billing and some of those things. I think we will do a better job of gathering those revenues that were owed or anticipated. I'm not aware of a ton of grant funding that's always available. I mean, there's been therapeutic learning classroom grants that have not necessarily been special ed specific, but kind of cross over a little bit into that realm. But as with anything, we need to try to go out and find as much revenue as we can and try to limit our expenses as much as possible.
I think also the SIM, I think that's the right acronym, I think that helps. I mean, that was always an issue, that a kid would come up and they always had an all-day para, and so so they just stayed that way. And so I think that what they're working on with teachers and teams and administrators to look at that, how can we cut back? I think that will help too.
While I appreciate the viewpoint on reducing expenditures, I'm quite leery of doing that at the cost of education for kids.
Yeah, so I will say, I don't think I heard that piece, that it will be at the expense of the educational needs of our students. It's just that as a district, we will do our due diligence to ensure that those expenses fall within the realms of what that student needs, as well as code it correctly. Is that like the best summary of what?
Yeah. Don't let it take away be that there's an active plan to reduce any amount of
correct
this. This was the information. As with any revenue or expense, we just need to be judicious.
Yeah. So it's not that what I'm taking away from this presentation is that we are not going to actively start looking at our students' IEPs or 504 plans and saying, nope, we got to cut costs and get rid of BIs or paraprofessionals. It's just that we will ensure that we're doing our due diligence to monitor all of those and that they are necessary and coded correctly. And we're using whatever revenue streams to sort of mitigate some of those expenses as possible.
Yep.
Well, I agree with that approach. I'm not going to be Pollyannish and say that we're going to do that absolutely perfectly. And imperfection in the system can not have the consequences that we would like.
Yeah.
And I recognize too that nobody has a crystal ball and can see into the future, but I'm curious if there is a sense of how much these types of increases will continue. Will we be, I know we've got some likely changes in enrollment that will affect this, but I know there are a lot of factors that play. And so my question is really not so much what do you think is going to happen next year or the year after, but how will we think kind of globally about planning within our budget for this so that we can manage it.
I mean, I think to Director Lingo's point earlier on in terms of maybe instead of making some of these changes that greatly increase the deficit all at once, that there could have been maybe a roadmap to stretch that out over a few years. I don't know if the team would feel any differently, but I don't know that there's a lot else that could be as significant a swing up as there was, and so hopefully it's more incremental of what we saw for the previous fiscal years, that we've kind of had the one jump up on the bar graph and then the rest is just more in line with maybe our salary increases or general SSA increases overall.
Any additional comments or questions? All right, thank you so much. That will take us to our action items for tonight. And first up is the Wear Orange Day 2026 resolution. It was presented at the last meeting and tonight for approval, and it's the first Friday in June. I just want to add that I know this was one that I had asked for the board to consider. It's a way to bring awareness to the national gun violence, not only nationally, but also locally for survivors and victims. So are there any comments or questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
Kim, I'm a yes vote.
Thank you, Director Finch.
I'm a yes vote too. Mine stopped working.
Thank you, Director Malone. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Sorry, I lost my place. Next action item is a resolution for approving the deposits of the proceeds received from the sale of real properties. It was all of those public hearings. So the Hills property, the 725 North Dodge Street property, and the 42.4 acres of unimproved real estate into the general fund. Are there any questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
Kim, I'm a yes vote.
Thank you, Director Finch.
Yes.
Thank you, Director Malone. Why, I'm not getting any.
I'm a yes vote if I haven't gone
Yes.
through.
If I have.
Thank you, Director Lingo, and thank you, Director Abraham. Director Horn Fraser
Yes.
and Director Eastham.
Yes.
All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Kim, before I do, would it be easier just to do a roll call vote because it doesn't seem like
It
it's
might,
working?
it's sporadic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next up is the negotiated agreement for the secretaries. Are there any comments or questions? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Motion to approve the secretary's negotiated agreement.
Second.
Abraham,
Yes.
Eastham,
Yes.
Finch,
Yes.
Horn Fraser,
Yes.
Lingo,
Yes.
Malone.
Yes.
All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up is the negotiated agreement for the physical plant employees. Yeah. Is there a motion? Are there any questions or comments?
President Malone, I just want to say that I missed the final negotiation session for the physical plant folks, and I apologize for that. I'm still have not learned how to use my calendar very well. So.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? Hearing none, is there a motion?
I move we approve physical plant contracts.
Second.
Thank you.
Abraham,
Yes.
Eastham,
Yes.
Finch,
Yes.
Horn Fraser,
Yes.
Lingo,
Yes.
Malone.
Yes.
All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up is the negotiated agreement for the nutritional services. Are there any questions or comments?
President Malone, do we need to vote on this?
Now, this one is in year two of a two-year agreement that was approved by the board in 2025, but it was just added. It does not need action, but for
sorry. Thank you.
informational purposes.
Okay.
And that's the same for the paraprofessionals as well.
Okay, so 5 and 6, we do not need to vote on. That takes us to negotiated agreement for the teachers, and thank you, Director Eastham.
Sure. I can be helpful from time to time.
Just a note, I will be abstaining from voting on this contract because there is, could be a perceived conflict of interest because a family member is a teacher. All right, are there any questions or comments? Is there a motion?
I move we approve the negotiated agreement for teachers.
Second.
Right?
Abraham,
Yes.
Eastham,
Yes.
Finch,
Yes.
Horn Fraser,
Yes.
Lingo,
Yes.
Malone.
Abstain?
All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with Directors Abraham, Eastham, Finch, Horn Fraser, and Lingo voting yea, and Director Malone abstaining.
Okay. Next up in Director Lingo, I wrote which ones you're gonna pull, but okay, is the 700 policies.
Motion to table the 700 policies, non-instructional operations and business services.
Second.
Abraham,
Yes.
Eastham,
Yes.
Finch,
Yes.
Horn Fraser,
Yes.
Lingo,
Yes.
Malone.
Yes.
All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Next up is policy 200.3G4, which is the Financial Oversight Committee Charter. Is there any questions or comment?
I have some questions about the charter, actually. And Director Lingo went through that so quickly tonight that I may have missed some things. So I did email in to Director Lingo prior to the Policy and Governance Committee meeting tonight about some language that called for the committee to approve the scope of the audit and to approve all just claims, and wondered if that should be changed to recommend. Was that discussed this evening?
Yes, it was. And
Okay.
so
And
we
did
changed.
we change it?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
We changed it to recommend?
Yes,
Okay.
yep.
And then I heard something about the number of liaisons, but I couldn't, it's very difficult to hear on the phone. So could you clarify for me what was said about the number of liaisons?
It's to change the 2 liaisons to 2 liaisons full-time on the, well, not full-time, but that instead of having 1 liaison on there all the time and then 1 rotate on and off by month, by whatever method we were going to, we decided to put 2 liaisons on there at once, so then it just builds that institutional knowledge, and the institutional knowledge is there for future meetings.
Is there a thought that a third could then come if they wanted to, or just 2 permanent liaisons for the year?
You know, we didn't talk about it. I mean, you know, we can have up to 3 before it's a quorum. I don't know that, we didn't talk about having 3 official members on that committee. Just 2 is what we stopped at.
It does kind of leave it open though if someone
Yeah.
wants to go, I suppose. Okay.
I say,
All right, thank you for clearing that up.
I'd say it leaves it open, but it's something that we can come back to later. I think the main thing, because there's another item that we're gonna come back to on the charter for the future, but we just kind of want to get it through to get the wheels rolling.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? And do we already have a motion? Okay, is there a motion to approve with the stated changes and edits?
A motion to approve policy 200.3G4, Financial Oversight Committee Charter, with the stated changes and edits.
And I second.
Abraham,
Yes.
Eastham,
Yes.
Finch,
Yes.
Horn Fraser,
Yes.
Lingo,
Yes.
Malone.
Yes,
All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
thank you. Next up is policy 207, Board of Directors Legal Counsel.
I'm gonna motion to table this.
Second.
All right,
Abraham,
Yes.
Eastham,
Yes.
Finch,
Yes.
Horn Fraser,
Yes.
Lingo,
Yes.
Malone.
yes.
All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Next up is policy 303.2, Administrator Qualifications, Recruitment and Appointment.
That one, we are going to motion to table it.
Abraham,
Yes.
Eastham,
Yes.
Finch,
Yes.
Horn Fraser,
Yes.
Lingo,
Yes.
Malone.
Yes.
All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
And the final action item is policy 303.4, administrator salary and other compensation.
I move to approve policy 303.4, administrator salary and other compensation.
Second it.
All right, thank you.
Abraham,
Yes.
Eastham,
Yes.
Finch,
Yes.
Horn Fraser,
Yes.
Lingo,
Yes.
Malone.
Yes.
All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. That takes us to our agenda setting. As we mentioned earlier, we had a hold on June 2nd for a possible retreat / work session for the board, but we will turn that into a meeting, a special meeting. I wanted to check, is 5 o'clock a good start time for folks? I know traveling to work.
I'll be good on 5.
Okay. All right. And on that agenda, we will have the interim search firm approval, as well as the updated personnel agenda and organizational chart. All right. And then that takes us to our regular meeting, which is scheduled for June 9th. We have all the listed regular items as well as the annual asset protection report. But there's several things in the parking lot that I don't know if directors would like to see put on that agenda. One that I saw that was noted that someone had asked for it to be on the June meeting, and I don't know if it'll be the first or second is, I believe it was investigations.
Yeah, that was me.
Okay, we can see if admin will be ready for that, or if it'll be the second one. But are there any items on there that we can talk with admin that directors would really like to see on that first June meeting? And we can see if they can be ready for that during agenda setting.
Screen time's the second meeting, right? Okay.
Yeah.
this one then.
All right. If things come up, please feel free to email. But with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.